So I just watched It Ends With Us, the movie, and here are my thoughts as a professional actor and as someone that escaped a very violent first marriage. The main thing that stood out to me was this weird lack of pacing or like momentum. Almost felt like the very composition of the storyboard itself was very like piecemeal together. Almost seems like there are certain scenes that could have been like rearranged in order and no one would have noticed. And because of that, I found it really hard to become emotionally invested in any of the characters, honestly. Full disclosure, I haven't read the book, so I don't know how Colleen Hoover handled, the amalgamation of emotional urgency that was needed. Whether it was Alyssa randomly announcing that Lily was her best friend, seemingly out of nowhere, or like the really weird restaurant scene where all of a sudden the stakes seemed higher, like out of nowhere. So many of the pivotal moments in the movie didn't seem justified. They didn't seem earned from an acting perspective. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but things felt like too on the nose. Like it was insisting upon itself too much and really kind of like not valuing the fabric that kind of weaves the entire story together. The next thing I have to mention is truly how much the rooftop scene, the one that Ryan Reynolds helped write, how much it actually does stick out in the movie. And here's the thing, I actually didn't think that Blake Lively was as terrible as people said she was in the movie, but I do think that this was the scene that she was the worst in. And then I asked myself why, right? I actually think that that is a direct result of the writing because I was trying to figure out, okay, like, but why would this writing make Blake's acting come across even more like Lifetime movie-ish? And I think I figured out what it is because to me, Ryan Reynolds' tone and like style of writing gives very much like theatrical. The thing is, even in the scene, we are indeed trying to embody a certain type of like witty, flirty repartee that you have when you're meeting somebody. But when I say that it's too theatrical and like on the nose, what I mean is that it almost feels kind of like redolent of like Neil Simon. Neil Simon's an American playwright who is often known for kind of like this quick, witty banter between couples. I truly think that that's why Blake's acting seems kind of inauthentic in that scene. Because even though couples will have witty banter with each other, there will still be a lot more moments of like that delicious awkwardness, right? So it seemed like Ryan was really prioritizing the wittiness of it as opposed to like the momentum of the storytelling, like I was saying. It's just me. But if you watch it in that scene, Blake almost seems like she's like projecting her voice in kind of like this unnatural way, especially in that part that everyone's talking about where she's kind of laughing and apologizing for not taking him seriously for being a neurosurgeon. Oh, oh, you're serious. Oh, no, no, no. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Even the inflection that she uses when she says, I'm sorry, I thought you were a crypto bro. It's a very hard thing to explain without getting into like my acting bag. But Blake has a lot of vocal intonation isms that I think is hard for her to like let go of. Rooftop scene just seems a little sterile and outwardly presentational as opposed to focusing on the complex interiority of the characters and how they actually affect each other. I'm just saying. And lastly, and this is on a very personal note, and you are free to disagree with me. As someone who honestly legitimately escaped a marriage where he tried to kill me, just didn't feel kinship or emotional truth with this movie. Being in love with someone that abuses you is literally like the most complicated relationship you could ever imagine as a human being. Nothing about Lily's journey in the movie seemed complicated to me. For me, I was looking for representation on why it is truly so complicated and difficult to leave that type of relationship. It was like they almost got there, but they didn't get there. For instance, one particular moment that actually did stand out and resonate with me was this moment where Lily and Ryle are talking and he says something to her like, "This is new to me. This is new to me," basically saying like he's so in love and like it seems random, but I needed more moments like that because that is a classic thing that like abusers do. A lot of people don't realize this, but they'll be so romantic and they'll make you think that your love is so special and unique and that's part of the power they hold over you. But when I heard that line, I was like, oh my God, yes, it's like my marriage all over again. Like this is new to me. Like, it's so dramatic and it's so extra. And I'm going to give you a trigger warning right now about domestic violence. So there it is. When I was with my ex-husband, one of the things that he did the most was force us to be intimate when I was not emotionally ready after a huge fight or an explosion that he had had. I actually didn't realize until years afterwards that I had spent years essentially being raped. So I guess what I'm saying, and this is again just my personal opinion, but there were so many moments where Ryle's horrible actions would just end nonsensically. Like everybody knows that abusers are abusive. I was really interested in seeing an emotional representation of the nuance that comes along with the person you're with apologizing profusely and then roping you back into that mental state of, and that's what I mean when it felt very just on the nose. That's what made it kind of feel unrealistic to me because that was like the hardest part of that abusive relationship. Sometimes people think it's so easy to leave abusive relationships You, so you should just leave. So much more complicated than that. And I didn't see representation of that. And do you want to know a movie that I actually thought did this so well? Waitress the movie with Carrie Russell, because there's a scene in there where like her husband Earl falls to his knees and like kind of wraps him around her like a shrimp, apologizing, saying, I'm so sorry. And all of a sudden you can see him as like a little boy. And that's what makes you stay as a woman, as a nurturer, right? As someone that can see the potential in people because you can see the inner child of people. Right? I needed some type of moment like that in this movie. I needed more moments of everything seeming like it was going fine. And then all of a sudden, Ryle gets pissed off about something and then it gets scary. There was like one moment of that. And the movie almost presented itself as if it had already done that for you. So just pretend like it's already happened, even though they didn't do that for you. The payoff for the spectacle of the scenes didn't work as much. There was just really something off with like pacing and tone and momentum. Even the scene at the very end of the movie, right, where she finally decides she's going to ask for a divorce, which should be such a big thing, fell so flat to me because I almost felt like that scene could have been in the middle of the movie. I didn't know where we were in this journey. The character of Ryle almost didn't make sense to me in this movie. It almost felt like he was just like a paper doll representation of like this character. As an audience member, I wanted to see Ryle's journey and be able to pick up on the little red flags. Oh, there you go. Oh, red flag. There you go. And it kind of felt like the way it was presented to us that they didn't feel like we were smart enough to do that as a viewer. I know this seems like a small thing, but there were even like little focused close-up moments on things like the heel of Blake Lively's shoes, truly read as kind of brand placements or something. Again, we're trying to build emotional momentum. So why are we all of a sudden like zooming in on like the heel of her shoe? Anyway, that's just my opinion. And one more thing, because I almost forgot to give you my significant note of the movie. The very last scene of the movie, when Lily asks Ryle for a divorce, which some would argue is like the ultimate essence of the entire movie, is the most confusingly tone deaf part of the whole movie to me. Because the entire point of domestically violent, abusive relationships is that it is so difficult and dangerous to try and leave. And again, I haven't read the book, but as a domestic abuse survivor, you're telling me that the most logical moment to ask for a divorce is when he's holding your fragile newborn baby. And then you're also telling me that easy as pie, just like that, he said, okay. That is not indicative of the vast majority of domestic violence survivors' experiences. I told him I want a divorce and he said, okay. It almost felt kind of infantilizing to me to portray that as the canonically accepted collective experience of domestic violence survivors. But that's just my opinion, and maybe other people will feel differently.